Imagine a world where your dreams are crushed before they even take flight. This is not fiction. It's the harsh reality of the Indian education system. Millions of students are trapped in a rat race, judged not for creativity or talent, but for marks on a sheet of paper. From the moment we step into school, we are taught to memorize, to obey, to fit into a mold. Questions are replaced by answers, curiosity is punished, and failure is seen as a crime. Every year, thousands of students face unbearable pressure from parents, teachers, and society. Pressure so immense that some see suicide as the only escape. We've seen the headlines, we've heard the tragedies. Behind every statistic is a young life lost. A dream left unfinished, and a potential that the world will never see. It's time to ask the hard questions. Are we educating our children, or are we breaking them? Creativity, mental health, passion, these should matter more than grades. Because a nation that kills the dreams of its youth is a nation without a future.
Note that I made the motion graphics video at 24 FPS and 1080p. These are the assets I used. All of them are free. This rat race video clip, which I got from YouTube, from the Steve Cuts YouTube channel. A lot of sound effects and music from pixabay.com, like whoosh, swish, and many more. A bunch of screenshots as well as AI-generated images. Note that I got the AI-generated images from Gemini. To do that, just go to gemini.google.com and give the prompt of your choice. I didn't use ChatGPT because that takes years to generate one image. Then this weird AI dub from 11 Labs. Finally, these types of motion videos which are going to be used in the background. I got them from YouTube. Note that I use Kdenlive version 25.04.2 for making this. Okay, so here the tutorial starts. First, let's disable all sound effect tracks so we can focus better on visuals rather than audio. For the background, I added this video, which is called a motion video or animation video or loop animation, black and white motion video. Well, I don't know its name, so let's just call it a motion video. Then I added a fade in effect to it of 3 seconds, obviously because that feels cool and looks professional.
After 3 seconds from this start guide, the first animation happens. I added this AI-generated earth, removed the background, and put it here. What did I do? First of all, I added the transform effect and animated it in 2 parts. In the first part, where this earth comes into sight, I scaled it up from 1%, not 0%, because for some reason, Kdenlive doesn't allow 0% scale, at least till now while I'm writing this script. I also rotated it from 0 degrees to 360 degrees. In the second half, I simply moved its position down because obviously the brain comes into sight. But before talking about the brain, let's finish the earth discussion first. If you notice, there are 2 subparts in the second half of the transform animation of the earth, which is simple. The first part is just moving it down quickly, and the second part is a bit more subtle motion of it continuing downward. Keep these small or big details in mind, because these are things people might not even notice, but they bring quite a big impact. Note that I added the exponential out effect in the first keyframe of the first part, and then for the third and fourth, I simply added smooth. That's all. Why? To make it feel better. Just play with keyframes and you'll understand everything automatically. Then, to make it feel even better, I added directional blur. I animated it from the starting point to the end point of the first half of the transform animation. How? From the first keyframe, starting with 0 degrees and 10 radius, to the last keyframe with 360 degrees and 0 radius, to make it feel more like rotating. Effects to keyframes. First keyframe with exponential out, obviously, to keep the motion consistent with the transform's first half. Then I added drop shadow with white color, 0x and y offset. Blur radius, that's what is animated. First keyframe starting with 0 blur radius and exponential out effect. Then the second point with blur radius 80 and smooth keyframe effect. And final effect with BR85. At last, I added this final directional blur effect in order to give the transform's second half more feel. What did I do? Simple. Just added a keyframe to match the movement with the Earth's motion. I added a keyframe from the start of the second half, then the next 3 keyframes at intervals of 6 frames. All keyframes of this directional blur effect are fixed at 90 degrees because their job is just for vertical motion. For animation, first keyframe with exponential out, starting with 0 radius to 2 for the second keyframe, then the next keyframe unchanged at 2 with smooth keyframe effect, and the last keyframe back to 0. That's all I did for the Earth till now. Then comes brain into sight, so yeah, this is what I did for it. At first, I put the brain clip starting from the part where the second subpart of the second half, or the third half, begins. Then added transform effect on it, with first keyframe at start and last keyframe at end, with movement of brain going upward. First keyframe at exponential out effect. You'll notice the Earth gets disabled at that time. Well, that's just the stuff I did for that effect where 3 claps happen and 3 things happen. Disabling of the Earth, brain viewpoint change, and then the brain gets big. You get it. Then added directional blur effect on it for giving more feel of vertical motion. The stuff we did just before in more advanced way for Earth. Also added a non-animated drop shadow effect without animating it, for the reason that I most probably would not need to explain. That's all. Finally, after disabling of Earth on first clap, this front side view, brain changes to left side brain on second clap, which is nothing but just change of 2 PNG images at same size, position, and drop shadow effect. Then, in the third clap, the brain goes big, which is nothing but just increasing the size of the brain via the transform effect without animating it. Then I added a box blur effect with 12 frames of animation by changing the horizontal and vertical multiplier from 25% to 0% with an exponential out effect. And lastly, a non-animated drop shadow effect. That's all what I did with this brain. And now we can see knife to come in play. First of all, I added knife PNG with transform effect to set its position, and then 3-way rotation to obviously set its rotation. Also animated transform for it slowly coming into sight with smooth effect. Then, as the knife is below the brain and also to keep things clean, I simply duplicated the clip and placed it on the V3 track, which is below the track where the brain is, and did the rest of the job. First of all, there is obviously a 3-way rotate and transform effect for a good position. And then the change is that I animated the transform more, where it goes inside the brain from the start point to the point where the brain is, with an exponential in effect. You will notice this bloody brain, which is nothing but just change in PNGs, and with more effects, I am going to talk soon, wait. For knife, last thing I added is directional blur with, again, 180 degree, 0 to 10 radius with exponential in to keep motion with movement. You get it. Finally, let's jump to this bloody brain and background before we talk more about knife. First of note that there is nothing animated here, and it's just a collection of a lot of effects. Starting with transform for good position, then directional blur with these settings for impact feel, and finally color temperature for bloody feel and well as color. I did the same for background, color temperature, and directional blur effect at 180 degrees and 30 radius.
Now you'll notice again a change of PNG, from bloody impact brain to destroyed brain or something like that. How did I do it? Well, you already know that. And if not, then I can say with 100% guarantee that you're that 13-year-old Sigma male brain rot kid watching this tutorial while planning a trip to Dubai, learning the 150th Sigma rule, and watching Skibbity Poop. Okay, leave that. Now let's talk about the next stuff I did, starting with this movement of knife, which is nothing but just like a reverse of what movement just happened with it before.
And then this movement of the brain, which you've hopefully already learned how to do by now. But here are some things I still want to tell you. I also added a transparency effect for a fade out, as well as changed the drop shadow color to red. That's all. And this is what I did for the first part. If you noticed, I also added a fade out for the background at the end, as well as change in the Gaussian blur effect on the scaled up brains, which is nothing but just an increase in the values of the Gaussian blur effect. I believe you can do that on your own. At the end, for finishing or something like that, I added this black screen effect above all these effects to give a kind of cool feeling. How did I add it? First of all, I dragged and dropped it above all tracks so that it overlays on top of all other tracks. Then just spawning this blue bar, composite and transform, composition track to V1, and compositing to screen in order to remove all black background. Now let's jump into next part. Okay, so let's start with this text animation stuff. Here things are simple. For the background voice, this is not fiction, I created separate title clips for each word. This is not and fiction. I placed them over the tracks in sync with the dub and applied a simple fade in effect with a duration of 6 frames. That's it. For the second part, it's the, harsh, and reality. I followed the same process, but this time I added them in sync with the dub without any effect. Now you might be wondering how I positioned all the titles so precisely. Most likely you don't know about the show background toggle in Kdenlive's title window. Just turn it on and you're set. This is all what I did for this. Now for this part, let's start with background. First, let me disable the V3 and V4 tracks so you can see the background more clearly. The first thing you'll probably notice is that the opening part looks sped up. And that's correct. I increased the speed to 500% and added the lens correction effect. Why? Because sadly, Kdenlive doesn't have motion blur, and after experimenting, I found that lens correction works best to give that speed up feel. You'll also notice a short 6-frame animation at the end. It's simply the lens correction effect easing back to normal, which creates the illusion that the clip is slowing down. Finally, for the part where the dub says Indian education system, the clip is slowed down, and near the end it's sped up again with a fade-out effect. Since this part is ending, the fade-out adds a smoother finish and makes it look cooler. Now for the Indian education system text, here is what I did. First, note that Indian system and education are two separate clips. Why? Because of the glitch effect applied to the education title. If they were combined, the effect would impact the entire Indian education system title, so I had to split them. Okay, let's start with the Indian system text. To sync its movement with the background, I used the transform effect and animated it. I probably don't need to explain every step, but there's one part worth pointing out. At the start, it simply scales from 1% to 100% with an exponential in effect. Then, you'll notice a smooth mid-scale from 100% to 120%. Basically, a slow, subtle push forward to stay in sync with the background motion. Finally, it scales from 120% upward until it gets so large that it leaves the screen or completely covers it. In this case, I stopped once it went out of the frame. Then I add transparency effect for a good fade in with exponential in, and fade out with cubic out too. Then square blur, just for fade out using cubic in, as you can see. Then I added a static red drop shadow, which basically works as a red glow. Finally, I applied lens correction, keyframeable, to give it that sped up feel and to draw extra focus on the education text, since that's what we're about to dive into. How did I do it? Simple. I keyframed the center correction of lens correction, keyframeable, back to 0 with an exponential in. That's all I did for the Indian system text. Now onto education. Before the glitch effect, everything else is just a copy-paste of the Indian system effects. How? Simple. Press Ctrl+C on the Indian system clip. Right-click the education title clip and hit paste effects. Done. And finally, for glitch effect, I just added non-animated 4 effects. Pixar, glitch worry, scanline ear, and exposure. That's all, with the following settings as you can see. That's all what I did for these text animation stuff. Now let's jump for this part. Starting off, the first thing you'll see is this rat race clip. How did I add it? Simple. Just 3 effects: crop by padding, transform, and directional blur. First, to give the clip those rounded corners, which it didn't originally have, I used crop by padding and set the radius to 0.3. Important. Always keep crop by padding above all the other effects in the stack. Otherwise, you'll run into problems. Why? Because Kdenlive processes effects in order from top to bottom. If you place crop by padding after something else, that other effect will be applied to the uncropped version of the clip, and only afterward will the crop be added, which usually isn't what you want. So remember, put crop by padding at the top.
Now comes the transform effect, which is nothing but the clip coming inside from outside, with exponential out effect to give that sped up and cool effect. Also, with a little smooth motion of it going from left to right, which is, again, nothing but just small things that matter. And finally, it goes out from left to right with exponential in. At last, the directional blur effect, which I probably don't need to explain why and how I did it in order to save your and my time, script length, editing burden, as well as my 11 Labs token. Then finally, you will see these 2 images also coming into sight, which is, again, nothing but just repeating old tricks. And if you have learned everything nicely so far, then I don't think I need to explain these 2 clips in detail. But yeah, I will still give you a simple tip that can answer your probable question. Your question might be how the distance between these 2 clips stays the same throughout the sliding animation. It's nothing but this. For the frames, the first clip is sliding away from 5 to 512. At the same time, the second clip is animated to come into sight with the same exponential in. That's all. In this final zoom, well, you already know how to do it. I'm not going to tell you.
And this final 12-frame glitch effect where I just cut the clip 12 frames before the ending and put the same glitch effect bundle that we used for the education title clip. Yeah, pick Zeror, glitch Zeror, RGB split Zeror, scanline Zeror, and exposure, just with more intensity. Finally, after 16 frames from the end of that final clip, or better, the end of the glitch sound, comes this part which you guys really liked on Reddit. Thank you guys, the school part. Starting with this part, it has just 2 effects. First, the transform, which animates from zoomed in on the kid's face to zoomed out fitting the whole screen, via exponential in. Then comes the Gaussian blur, which has 3 parts. The first part is 1 second or 24 frames where the blur transitions from 100 sigma and vertical sigma to 0 via exponential out. Then after a break of 2 seconds and 20 frames, it's 12 frames of blurring back to 100, again via exponential out. Finally, for the words in the dub, memorize, obey, and fit into the mold, I added 3 images. The first image has the crop by padding effect on top, with a 0.3 radius. Then comes a transform effect, scaling from 50% to 60% over 12 frames with exponential out, followed by a Gaussian blur of 1 second, 24 frames, transitioning from 100 to 0 via exponential out. At the end, I added a static white drop shadow. That's all. I repeated the exact same process for the other 2 clips, synced with obey and fit into the mold. Now comes this part of this new type of title animation. Here is what I did step by step. Starting with the background, not the black background, but the text's background, or the text body. You can see a type of animation inside it. What is it? Before talking about that, let's finish the easy things first. The flash at the start is just a yellowish-white solid color with a fade-out transparency animation, and another fade-out at the end, both via exponential out. Then comes a simple title clip with an animated transform for a little linear zoom-in. It also has non-animated glitch 0R and scanline 0R. You'll also see some titles in red. Most of you might think it's because of a color effect like colorize, but no. That's not true. Why? Because titles don't even hold their own visual properties. So how are they visible with an animation inside them? Hell yeah. Now it's time to explain the text background. I placed a video clip below the title clips, then added a blue bar for the titles with these settings: composite and transform, composition track set to V2, and compositing set to destination in. This way, the surface of the title takes on the clip from the background. And yeah, that's how I animated these title clips. Simple as F. I also added exposure on the videos since they were very dark, and used color temperature on some of them to make them red. That's all I did for this part. Then comes the paper SFX, and this section ends. Then comes this part, which is also very simple, starting with the background, which is actually this clip, and then I added the edge detection effect over it with every value set to 0 for this kind of look. The images in this clip are just screenshots of ChatGPT's messages cropped to the main paragraphs. For the first pop-up, I used directional blur and transform, and the rest you already know. For the other clips synced with thousands, parents, teachers, and society, I use the same formula. Edge crop for selecting or cropping the screenshot to the paragraph where the message or dialogue source is. Then transform for a little zoom-in animation if you noticed. Then comes edge glow. But before that, brightness, which is just a simple 1000 to 500 cubic out animation for that flashy pop-up. And the animated edge glow, that's just for the paragraph or screenshot background to go dark, by maxing out the non-edge brightness downscaling multiplier of edge glow with smooth, deprecated. That's all I did for this part. And then it was just copy-pasting with adjusted values. Now comes this part, which is also very easy, like seriously. First of all, let's talk about the rope. How I added this over the eye? It's just this blue bar. Then inside the blue bar, it's composite and transform. Then V2, and finally, lighten. That's all. Then I added transform to adjust position, lens correction to give it a kind of fisheye effect so it feels like it's above the round eye or something like that. Then rotoscoping, mask, to fade out its border for obvious reasons. You can see the settings. After that, film grain and old film effects. For the background image, it's just vignette, film grain, and old film with the same settings as the rope. For the black and white effect, it's just the binarize effect, added every 17 frames with a 12-frame duration. And I did the same on the rope so it doesn't look odd. For the glitch effect at the start and end, it's the same glitch stack. Pix 0R, glitch 0R, RGB, split 0R, scanline 0R, and exposure that we've been using for a long time. Finally, I added the NDVI filter effect, yeah, a new one, to make it look cooler. Also note there's a fade-in for the rope at the start, if you noticed, which is nothing but a simple fade-in I thought would make it look like the guy's arriving near the rope or something like that. I know, I'm a bad editor, sorry. Finally comes this part, which I don't think I need to explain much, because if you've learned everything properly so far, then you can probably do this even better than me. But yeah, there's one thing I want to tell you, and it may sound more like a tech support or YouTuber tip and trick than a video editing tutorial. But still, Here it is, how I took the screenshots of these websites. Honestly, I don't know how people usually do this so perfectly. Maybe my way is wrong, but instead of going full screen on a website and taking screenshot with Windows plus PartSC, I just use this Chrome extension called Fireshot. So yeah, a small casual tip I gave you in the middle of video editing talk. But okay, let's jump back to the topic.
Then comes this part, which I'm just skipping, and after that, a lazy version of the title tricks we already did before. And now, finally, we're at the end. And honestly, this feels so damn good. Even right now while writing the script, and later when I'll be wrapping up the edit, I love that moment when I see just a little left. It's one of the best feelings. If you're a video editor, you probably get me. Especially if you've worked on long-form edits or tutorials. If not, maybe you don't. Personally, I enjoy writing the script, but explaining every little step sometimes feels like I'm some boring teacher. Anyway, you get the point. Now, after that little break, let's jump over this part.
First, let's wrap up the easy part, the title stuff. Nothing new here, just the same tricks we've been doing before. But the real question is, what's going on with the background? What actually is this effect? Well, it's just a raw video clip in the background, sped up to sync with the dub. Are we educating our children, or are we breaking them? Over that, I dropped a blue bar effect using Composite plus Transform. Then, I set it to V1 and applied bitwise not XOR. And that's literally the whole reason behind this effect. But what about that crazy bunch of question marks at the end, popping up frame by frame? Did I really sit there and manually create titles for every single frame? Obviously not. Here's the trick. When you're making a title, there's this option called typewriter effect. Just turn it on, set the frame step to 1, so it literally types 1 character per frame, and change the expansion mode to by character. Boom, that's it. Instant effect without the pain of manual work. Now this part, quick note, these bars are custom made by me. So yeah, links in the description if you want to grab them. Now about that pop effect, it's just the same old transform plus directional blur we've been using. Nothing new. So let's skip that for the images. But for the text, here's something important. You actually can't use directional blur on title clips. If you try, it'll glitch out in a weird way. At least that's what happens to me. Maybe you'll get lucky. So if you're facing the same issue, the fix is simple. Just switch to box blur. That one works perfectly fine for title clips.
And that's it. The video wraps up right here. Nothing more, nothing less. For the audio part, though, I'll be real with you. SFX is something you have to develop your own sense for, like which sound effect fits where, how long it should last, when to cut it short or let it breathe. That's not something I can spoon feed you. The best way? Watch absolute cinema. Pay attention to how they use sound, adopt those tricks, and then apply them in your own way. Trust me, once you get the hang of it, your edits will hit completely different.
One last thing I forgot to mention earlier. After editing, I first rendered the clip at 24 frames per second, then re-rendered the final video at 15 frames per second to get a jittery, choppy effect. To do this in Kdenlive, open Project, Project Settings, click Create New or Edit Your Current Profile, set the resolution to 1920 by 1080, the display aspect ratio to 16:9, and the frame rate to 15 frames per second. Save the profile and render using that profile. Done.
Making this video was hard, and it got even worse because of my potato PC. Like, seriously, bro. Kdenlive crashes a lot, freezes a lot, and eventually just crashes again. So yeah, if you want to help me build a $500 PC so that one day I don't end up nuking myself with this burning laptop, please consider helping via scanning this QR code. This would help a lot. Like, I can't explain how happy I'd be even if I receive just 1 rupee, which is actually 0.011 United States dollar. Yeah, I literally Googled that before writing the script. Note that you can probably fund me only in INR, most likely via an Indian bank account, thanks to some classic RBI rules. If you can't support me because of currency barriers or anything like that, then no worries. Just like, share, and subscribe so I can hit monetization requirements and maybe earn a little. Also, please drop a comment, even something small and good, so I know I'm not making videos for literally no one. By the way, thanks for watching, and have a good day. Keep cooking!
Hey guys, one last thing. To build a stronger portfolio, I'm currently offering free video editing services to a few clients like you. I'll take on your project and edit it for free under some simple rules to keep everything fair and organized for both of us. This is a time-limited offer, so hurry up before my free freelancing phase ends. Check out my portfolio, or better yet, my website, using the link in the description or in the About section. Thanks a lot!